Good afternoon and welcome to this workshop on JSTOR. My name is Sarah Davidson Squibb, and I'm glad that you could join me for this short session today. As part of this workshop, I'm going to first of all start off with a little bit about JSTOR and how to get there, some of the search strategies that you can use in this tool, as well as some of the features that it has, including its workspace and text analyzer, and also a little bit about its connections to UC Library Search and Google Scholar. So I'm just going to exit out of these kind of slides and return to UC Merced's library homepage. For myself, I normally get into JSTOR by going to our databases listing. You'll see the quick link to databases found under UC Library Search. I'm going to click on that, which will take you to our database listing. You can search for JSTOR here. I also know that it's in our popular databases list, so I'm just going to scroll down and click on JSTOR. This is bringing me to JSTOR search page. If you're on campus, you don't have to do anything special to get in here. If off campus, again, you will want to be connected to the virtual private network first. You may also want to get into JSTOR from our library's homepage just using UC Library Search. If you search for JSTOR, this is going to bring up some records. I need to look into this some more. This first link to JSTOR is actually just going to take you to a portion of JSTOR right now. And so I'm going to X out of this record and go to JSTOR here. And it says view full text on this JSTOR record. If I click on that, it's going to take me to the same spot. So here we are at the JSTOR homepage. It's telling me that the access is provided by the University of California, Merced. Over here on the right-hand side, I also have a navigation menu, and I'm just going to pop into a few of these things first of all. And so there's, an about section for JSTOR, which provides more context for what is in here. JSTOR not only has journal articles, but it has books, book chapters, images, and also primary sources. And these are across a variety of disciplines. And so there's a little bit about JSTOR there if you want to explore more of that. If you also go under the Browse menu, you can get a sense of some of the content that's in here. They have it organized by publishers. They also have it organized by collections. I'm going to pop into the collections section for a minute. And they tell you that there's over 1,000 collections, and you can sort of browse this by contributor to the collection or filter. So this can be kind of fun to browse and see what's available in through the collections. If I go to publishers, I personally don't use this very often, but you can see, if you're looking for a publisher, find it or, click on it to find out more about the publisher and what they are contributing through JSTOR. And then, of course, something that you might find even more useful is if you want to see if there's a specific title in here, you can go to that browse by title. And when you go to a specific, letter in here, you can see the titles, and you can also see the publication dates. One thing that is important to know about JSTOR is that we as a UC library have access to a lot of the content in JSTOR, but not necessarily everything that JSTOR offers. It depends on what we have subscribed to. So there may be times when something comes up in JSTOR, but you don't have full text access. At the same time, I think people really love JSTOR because there is so much full text directly within the tool. Another thing about JSTOR is it stands for journal storage, and it tends to have what we call a moving wall. So with most publications, you are not going to see the most recent 3 to 5 years of content. But as that moving wall or 3 or 5 years moves, they'll start adding some of that content. So if you are looking for things that have been published much more recently, they may not, for instance, be found in JSTOR. And most of the content in JSTOR as well is peer-reviewed. However, primary sources that they have in here are not, necessarily going to be considered peer reviewed. I think in terms of book content, we sort of don't always use that terminology of peer reviewed. We might say it's like a scholarly book. It still might go through some sort of editing or peer review process, but there are going to be those, again, books and book chapters in here. So that's, very briefly about the content. You can do a lot of exploring in here to see what kind of content is available. But we're going to leave the content piece for now and go over to actually searching. So the search box is available to me even from this browse page. I could just go back to the JSTOR homepage by hitting that logo in the upper left. For me personally, I do like using JSTOR's advanced search, and the advanced search has a quick link just above the search box at the upper right. If you go under the search menu, you will also see an advanced search. They also have an image search, but let me go ahead and click on the advanced search and share a little bit of why I prefer some of the aspects of advanced search, and then some of the other search strategies that you can take advantage of in here. So with keyword, this is typically what you're going to start with your searching. I could search for something like a wildfire and prescribed burn in here. So I'm just using the keyword of wildfire with this phrase. I'm putting in the and in JSTOR. If you leave that out, it will still treat it as though there is an and in there. And this is going to be searching all fields. And then, I currently have on access content I can access as my default. But a couple pieces as you keep scrolling down, these are things that I prefer. Sometimes I want to narrow to things like articles and books. I might want to leave reviews off. JSTOR has many, many book reviews. If you want those, it's a fabulous place, but it can also be a little overwhelming. So sometimes I might leave that off. Again, I could select research reports. You have a language limiter that you could select. Again, there's a lot of English language content. So for me, I'm not always doing that. And at this point, you could put in a specific journal or book title as a way to also see if that is showing up, or to do, again, a more specific keyword search within a specific journal or book title. The other portion which I use a lot is the journal filter by discipline. And this is where you can select kind of like a category of journals in which to look. So you can see that first off, they tell you that they have 21 titles that have basically been tagged or categorized in their African American studies. And in this case, I might say with my search, I actually want anthropology. I might want these environmental sciences or environmental studies, but you can kind of get a sense of what is in here. So lots of humanities, but again, not strictly humanities. There's, social sciences, and there are some other maybe hard sciences, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that advanced search. And I've used some of those narrowing options in there. And actually, I've maybe made it too narrow. I have 5 results with that, 4 coming from journals and 4 from book chapters. When you're on this page, I do recommend also using the modify search if you want to go back and switch up what you were doing. And so in this case, when I actually came back to that, you can tell that it took off my categories, which is probably just fine. I am going to switch this up a little bit. I'm going to put an asterisk after wildfire to pick up wildfires, so that will serve as a truncation symbol. And let's just see, with doing that and not limiting to a discipline, if I get some more results. So I'm going to submit my advanced search again. Yeah, and so this expanded it quite a bit. So that's a little bit of some, basic search strategies that I could do. I'm going to modify my search and just kind of highlight a couple other ones that I might do. So I could put something like humor or humor as a concept, and then put in something like teaching. Again, I'm keeping this as all fields. I'm going to keep these narrow results, and I can submit my advanced search. Of course, I could narrow it down to something like education, which might be a nice way to do this. Again, there's a lot of titles in there, so I'm going to select that and submit my advanced search. So again, getting a lot of results for this, but at this point, I still could narrow down by subject. So at this point, I could select education, which is still going to give me a lot of different articles. Let me modify this again. I could also, expand this out, put in another synonym. I could also say, hey, I want to search or have that concept come up in the item title. So this is where I would call this fielded searching, where you're telling the search tool I want to search in a specific field. And I will use this pretty regularly in JSTOR. Sometimes I feel like it helps to get me to more relevant results. Of course, it can sometimes eliminate things that you might want. But when I'm getting this many search results, I might say I want this in the item title and submit my advanced search. So this is going to be a limiting strategy. And here I have items showing up for me, just over 400 results. And again, I might say, I want more recent literature, but remember that piece about JSTOR sometimes not having the most recent content. But I could, again, use a date limiter in here. I could say, 2015 to 2022 and apply that. And of course, that's bringing it down. JSTOR does have, some other search strategies, which I don't use a ton, but that are also possibilities. You can do, I'm going to go back to modify search. Something where you can, I'm going to do this. I'm going to use the word labor. And if you put the tilde sign afterwards, that's going to try to come up with similar words. And I was trying to do this to pick up even different spellings of that, even though it doesn't work exactly the same as labor or labor. And I could do something like that. This is not the world's greatest search, but I could put that in my item title. So that's another search piece you can do. Obviously, with that many results, I really need to pair that with some other terms. You can also do something that's called boosting a term in JSTOR. So for instance, I'm going to try just copying this out. If I do something like drinking water, and I'm doing this as a phrase, and this little caret symbol, which is going to be above your number 6 on your keyboard, this means it's boosting this drinking water 5 times is more important than the word of toxins. And I may or may not want that in my title field, but this is something else you can kind of play with if you want to boost a term or a phrase. So you can see drinking water, at least in these first ones, are also coming up in the title with that boosting. And another thing that can be kind of interesting is you'll notice in this second field, they have something called near 5, near 10, near 25. So this is if you want a word within or near 5 words or 10 words of another word. So it's kind of interesting. At the same time, it is somewhat limited. They only let you keep the same field. So if you were using item title with a word, you would have to use item title again. And it also only works with single keywords. It doesn't work with a phrase of 2 or more words and then something else. So that is, again, something you could play with, something that I personally haven't really used a lot, but I think it's helpful to know that it's there. So those are sort of some interesting search strategies. I'm going to go ahead and search for one of these again that I did earlier. Let's do that in the item field. I'm going to change this back to and I'm going to do teaching, submit my advanced search. When we are here on the results page, we already mentioned a little bit about refining your results. Over on the right-hand side is where you can do things such as download an article. It brings up this little window where you accept and download. But this is, bringing up the PDF for me, and I can bring up the item and save this. So I'm going to get rid of that. You can also click on Cite, which will give you citations in MLA, Chicago, APA. There's also options to export to some citation management tools. Right now, you are also hearing my dog who has joined me for this workshop. You can also select items that you're interested in over here and also have the option to export your selected citations here. So you can do that with multiple items versus just one item. I'm now going to show a little bit about the tools because this is going to connect to this save option over on the side. So with tools, JSTOR has something called Workspace, and Workspace is exactly that, a space where you can save items and organize them and come back to them. So with Workspace, I'm going to go ahead and click Login. With the login, you should go over here and say, look for your institution, find my institution, that red button. Click on it, type in Merced to search for our institution, select that, and then it should bring up in the results list University of California, Merced. Go ahead and click on that, and this is going to take you to the single sign-on for UC Merced, and I am going to authenticate here in a moment with Duo. So I am opening this up. I am going to log in, and then it tells me or has my name in the upper right corner. And I think the first time you do this, at some point it's going to ask you, if you're a faculty or student, etc. And I have just a small number of things in my workspace. You can see in the folder section, I have one folder called copyright. I also just have some items that are hanging out in my workspace. And in this workspace, the cite option is here again. So similar to the window that we saw before, you can delete things. I like this feature where you could add a note. So maybe you want to say what the significance of this is. Maybe, you read it, etc. And then you can also move items from here into a folder. So if I click move on this one, I can go to this existing folder on copyright, or I can create another folder, click create, and click move. And that tells me the item was moved into InfoLit, and I now have this new folder. So here's the folder with just the one item in it. Once you are in a folder, you have some other capabilities that are going to show up here in sort of the upper right. There's a share option. If you make the folder viewable, then you can have a link to share with others. So if I turn that on, it will now give me a copy link option. You can present. This is sort of interesting, but it basically, gives what the article looks like, and you can go through it. So I'm not always sure how people might use that, but that's the present option. I'm going to try to escape out of that. And you can export, but the export is what they call this reference list PDF, and it's not quite what I would have expected. It's not necessarily giving me the citation in a specific format, but I'm just going to open this up so you can see. Again, it's kind of like a graphic, the title, and this is hyperlinked. One thing that I personally have expected in here is I wish they had an export again to a citation management tool, but that is not showing up in the folder. Within folders, you could also create subfolders, so you can do quite a bit of organizing of your work. And if I go back to search, and let me do just something really shorter to illustrate. We'll just do the one-term laughter. with teaching. So when you're on here, if I click laughter and these things, I should be able to click save. Let me go over to the side and click save. And I could say, let me put these in this info lit and save. So I'm actually going to see if this only took that one. I think it maybe took the one instead of 2 items. Yeah, so here it is. So this is something, I don't actually know when they started this Workspace. I think it's a little bit newer, but it's something you might want to be aware of, especially if you're using JSTOR a lot. It may be a place that you want to take advantage of. The other thing that I want to highlight in tools is the text analyzer. This is a project that's been around at JSTOR for a while, but they still consider it to be in beta. So brought to you by JSTOR Labs, and it's intended for individuals who want to use one article or one text to potentially locate other articles. And so it tells you that you can drag or drop an article or an image into this. So I'm going to try a couple examples, and let me, there we go. I want the select files from your computer, which disappeared on me for a moment. So I'm going to go select files from your computer. I'm going to go into this JSTOR folder, and I'm going to upload this PDF article. Once you click to upload it, it says it's uploading. It's not going to save your document. So literally they tell you that, say you've written a piece, you could even upload your own writing into here and see what kind of text is matched. So it's analyzing it. It then takes a couple seconds to get to this text analyzer page. And what it's doing is it's trying, in a sense, to scrape out what they think are important terms that they're calling prioritized terms. So these are on the left, and these lines are sort of like the weight that they're giving your terms. And those other terms are under here. So identified terms that you can actually add to the prioritized terms. So these green ones are the prioritized ones that are showing up here. Then on the right-hand side, there is a results list. So it's trying to give you other materials out of JSTOR that it thinks matches this text that it just analyzed. So this is kind of interesting. I think sometimes it works better than other times, but it's something you might want to play with. You can also, in the prioritized terms, decide, well, I actually want it to be considering mental health more, and I want to reduce the prioritization of occupational psychology. So you can do that. You can also delete or add other terms. I'm going to delete the randomized control. And I could also add something like maybe yoga back in if I wanted to. And when I added that, it made it completely prioritized, but I could also switch that out. So you can kind of fiddle with this a little bit. And again, it's pretty interesting. I'm going to analyze another document. It doesn't say it here, but I was reading on JSTOR that you should be able to put in a URL for something and have it analyze things. So let's just go, I'm just going to pop over to The Economist for a moment. See if I can get something off of here. I'm going to accept those, close some other screens. I'm just going to try this article, The Inflationary Consequences. I'm going to copy this URL. I'm going to go back to the text analyzer, put this in, hit it. So again, it's analyzing. That can take a little bit of time. We'll see if this is successful or not. And then it should be generating recommendations. So this has worked for me in the past. We will see if it's actually going to do it. This feels like it's taking a little bit longer than usual. And I suppose it's possible that it could depend on the website. I'll give it a couple more seconds and we might just go back and try something slightly different. Yeah, because this is the longest I've actually had to wait for it to analyze something. So let me go back. So it said there's an error in analyzing. We could try that again, but I'll let you experiment with that. I'm going to try one other thing in terms of selecting files. It's also supposed to select or be able to read, like, images and things. So I have an image here of a very short kind of posting in the New York Times. So I'm going to try opening that, see if this will also analyze that image. And maybe, here we go. So generating recommendations, but again, it usually takes a few seconds, even once it hits that bar. But that screenshot I had for the New York Times is talking about students and whether or not they're digital natives. Now, I notice here in my prioritized terms that they don't actually use the phrase digital natives. They're talking a lot about digital humanities. So I could even add my own term to here if I wanted to. And this will update the results. And again, I can fiddle with these and how important they are or not, and change things up. So I actually think that's a pretty interesting feature. And in some ways, it's almost like a, find me similar kinds of results. So that is the text analyzer, and might be fun for you in your own research. So that's a little bit about content, about searching, about some of the tools in JSTOR. I am going to wrap up with just a little bit more about also where is JSTOR content. So I personally like coming in and searching JSTOR on its own, and I suspect that a lot of other folks do as well. But you will see JSTOR in other locations. So I'm going to come back to UC Library Search, which we got to initially from the big UC Library Search on our homepage. In UC Library Search, this is pulling from a lot of different databases and collections, again, articles and books. But you can search in something like UC Library Search and retrieve a lot of JSTOR content. So I'm going to search for inflation and mortgage and housing in here. Hit the search icon. And this is interesting. That seems like very few results. I'm going to go back to UC Library Search. And maybe I misspelled something, mortgage and housing, because this is searching a lot of different information sources. So yeah, this seems a little bit more realistic. But what I'm going to do over on the left-hand side, or just show you, is if you come down on the filters, there's something that says collection. Under collection, this is going to show some databases or records from which things are pulled. Sometimes this can be a little bit confusing because we actually don't subscribe to something like Scopus, but it says we have these records. But you'll see that there's JSTOR archive, and it's saying that 4,677 items are coming from JSTOR. And you could select this, apply the filter, and get to records that are going to take you back over to JSTOR. In the searching I've done, I've noticed that if I do the same search in JSTOR, I tend to get a few more results, and I'm not quite sure what that is about. But this is something I just wanted to make you aware of. So I'm going to click this money illusion and housing frenzies. I could have clicked the download PDF, but you'll notice that it says it's online, and JSTOR is one of these options. For this journal, the most recent 4 years aren't available, but this is what year? A 2008 article. So this is something we could get through JSTOR. It looks like this happens to also be available in some other collections that we have. So I could click on that, and it's going to bump me over to JSTOR, where I have the article. I can get the stable URL. I didn't mention this before, but you can, of course, page through in JSTOR, or you can download the PDF from here, which is easier for those who kind of want to store things and name them and organize their information. So UC Library Search is a place where you can get to JSTOR content. You have probably also noticed that Google Scholar often will lead you back to JSTOR content that we have too. So I'm going to try housing and, well, let's do this. Not that mortgage or order can influence this, but let's do mortgage, inflation, housing. I'm not using ands in Google because it basically ignores them. And I'm going to click on that, and you'll notice like the first one over here is telling us that it's actually going to be coming out of jstor.org, as is the second one. So Google Scholar, again, could be really useful to getting into content. You aren't going to have the ability in this kind of search tool to narrow down to, say, just JSTOR content. So it's a little bit more limited, but it's another way in which you may find yourself getting back into JSTOR. So that's interesting too, because that's taking me directly to the Journal of Political Economy, I think, because I clicked on this link versus clicking on the PDF over on the far right. And that looks like it's taking me to a JSTOR article download. Again, they tend to just have these numbers. I personally like to save things with like an author name, a date, and something more descriptive if I'm working with a lot of things. So that, again, was just a very brief introduction to JSTOR. I hope it provided you with something new, another strategy to try, or a tool that's available in there. Again, this is often a go-to database because it covers so many disciplines and it has so much full text. So I hope you enjoy using it. Please reach out to me if you have questions. You can email us at library@ucmerced.edu. You can also go to our Ask a Librarian page to chat or make an appointment. And my information, as well as my great colleagues, is under About Us and library staff. And so you can feel free to reach out to me as well. It also has a link to my appointment calendar. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you on another workshop.